Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll do a video on how to basically choose your web technology or basically choose your setup to go into a web project. So by the end of the video, you should have a better understanding of how basically my strategy to go from zero from idea of a project and at the end having a fully set up project, secure and testable and repeatable for all your other projects. So there's a few steps I want to talk about to basically go through that thought process and make it very easy to basically go in a technical way about understanding each requirement. So first things first is defining your goals, right? So imagine you have a project in mind. So let's say it's I don't know, an API you just want to make, or let's say it's a full scale web app where you want to have users and stuff like that. The project's going to be different on each case, and it's very important to understand that before you start your project, because depending on the project you're doing, it's going to change which type of web framework you should use, if you should even use a web framework, or should you just use a vanilla type of way. I'm going to go into that right after, but um, you should also think like how often this project will be used, right? Is it something that, just use internally in your team? Is it something you're just only using yourself as you're on your own network, stuff like that? Other things to consider. There's also like other features it must have. So let's say you need real-time messaging, like a messenger type of application. Well, you need to think about that before you're choosing your web technology, because not all web technologies would allow specific features. So this is just to lay the ground and give you a better understanding of like what's required and what you will maybe need from the technology you're gonna end up choosing, right? So there's a few like main technologies you could choose. So most of the most popular of them are basically everyone is based off of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, what happens with those three components after that is that you can have other languages or framework that basically interpret those and basically do the translation from their own programming language to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? You could be writing a website in languages like C++ or C that are made for low-level programming, right? For things like operating systems and stuff like that. But that's not going to be the best use case, right? Each language usually has something it's better for. So very popular languages in web development will be like JavaScript, Python. You're gonna have Ruby on Rails. You're gonna have Java with Java Spring, PHP, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you just need to go first, think about it in the way which language do you want to learn. So if you want to learn, let's say you've learned Python in school and you just want to get ready with a um, like a web app that is fastest to do for you and also just makes sense for your skills that you previously owned. So if you know already Python, why not go with Python, right? This is like one thing that would make the most sense. And that's how I would go about it, right? But if you decide that you're starting from scratch, you don't know any programming languages, for myself, I would probably go with JavaScript, because I think JavaScript is very proficient and multi-use. So you can make web application, mobile application, um, like with React Native and stuff like that. So I would go with JavaScript. If you want to go more on the kind of wild side, you could go with stuff like PHP or Ruby on Rails, which are a bit more technical and harder to learn. But otherwise, I would go with JavaScript. Now, after that, there's also another thing you need to think about when using a specific technology. So there's the language, but after that, you also have how to use that language, right? So basically, a way a web server works is that when you send a specific request, so the way a web server works is that it can talk to another server via a protocol that we call HTTP. Um, so basically what it does is that you can send get, post, put, patch. Those are just ones of the few that basically allow servers to communicate together. The main ones are basically get and post, but basically when you do a get is that you require a resource from a server. So let's say I just want to display a home page, then I'm sending a request to the web server to display me my HTML file that is rendered as the home of the server. Another example for post is maybe I want to submit a form about, let's say, sending an email from a client's lead or things like that. So this would be a post request. Now, the reason I'm outlining those is that each different framework or basically language will have their own specific platform that you can send it from, send those requests from. So I'm going to give you an example with JavaScript. You have tools like Node.js, Express.js. So Express.js is a node-based web server. It's basically a very bare bone web server. So if you were to build, smaller stuff like maybe an API server, which doesn't really have a front end, doesn't need to have a front end, but just needs to respond to API requests, stuff like that. This is maybe what you would go for. But if you need stuff like a multi-page user authentication, more heavy kind of stuff where there's a lot of people maybe visiting different pages, you can have content, more textual, blog content, stuff like that. I would go with stuff like React or in Next.js and stuff like that. But definitely, every time you're choosing a web project, you need to think: do you need to go with a big framework like React, Next.js, Angular, Vue.js, or can you get away with just using a basic web server like Express.js, which you can do the same things as Next.js, but it's just smaller and it requires more fine tuning to get it to speed with those React frameworks. So you got to keep that in mind when thinking about your technology. So then another thing to think about is, let's say you've chosen to learn React, right? Is there an ease of use? Is there a big learning curve? So if you're like choosing a specific framework derived of a language, you need to make sure that there's enough beginner friendly tutorials, right? If you're going and learning a language alone, and then you find out that the web framework associated to it is like there's no documentation, it's not well maintained, there's kind of like information scattered all across, and it's really hard to learn. There's a lot of obstacles. I wouldn't go for this specific way, because you're gonna get lost, and ultimately you're probably gonna just drop it out or spend way too much time learning about it, while you could go with something faster. And then there's also like how steep is the learning curve. So obviously, like if you use maybe web frameworks that are harder to learn, like I said, maybe derived from languages like C++, stuff like that, or even normal harder frameworks like Ruby on Rails and stuff like that, could be harder than going with a more simple approach like PHP, Laravel. Then you have Java, Bootspring. You could have Python, Django, or Flask, stuff like that. JavaScript. So that's another one thing to take in mind. And another thing that is very popular from today's age is basically starter kits or templates. So Mark Liu is basically a indie hacker, basically made a Next.js like starter kit called Shipfast, and that's something that really blasted off, because what happens is people can learn Next.js really fast and learn the basics of React really fast without having to understand everything. But this is one of the reasons it got so popular, right? Because it just gave so much value fast. So this is kind of an example of having like good tutorials, templates, and stuff like that around a specific framework. So that's another thing to watch and research before choosing a specific technology. Now, there's another thing that comes with it, is that each technology and basically each platform comes with a way to host and deploy your application, right? So if you're using a website like WordPress, just to, deploy like a blog or stuff like that, or even like a small e-commerce website with WooCommerce and stuff like that, you might not need to, have like super fancy servers like continuous integration, where each time you modify the website, it rebuilds an image and stuff like that. But on other frameworks like maybe Next.js, or if you were to use, um, Vercel, like the platform for Next.js, you need to understand how it is hosted, how you should deploy it. Is it self-hostable? Would I want to use the cloud all the time? Should I use a VPS? Stuff like that. It's all things you need to consider before choosing a platform, because usually what happens is each platform is basically sponsored by a bigger platform. So in this case, like Next.js is sponsored by Vercel. Laravel is also sponsored. Remix is sponsored. So you need to check what's the basically the ease of deployment and ease of hosting before you choose your platform. Now, next step is apart from like finding tutorials and finding templates as starter kit, like is there a community around the language, around the framework, sorry? Is there a support group that has been formed? Is there Discord channels that help people that maybe are just learning or are looking for like initial advice on that? That's also very important, because if you find yourself stuck on a problem, there's nothing on the web, and then you don't know where to go. You go to AI, it doesn't know what it means. Um, you're gonna want to have a community where you can ask your questions and get like fast support. That's also like a good thing to get answers to common issues, and it's very important for your knowledge, basically your learning curve to increase and pick up speed. Um, and also, like, if you can find a course around a specific platform on Udemy, Coursera, or YouTube, also very good to have, because those are valuable resources that you can come back later if you still have issues. um, Now after that, like, let's say you've got that whole part covered, so this I would basically think about it more as the learning curve, so understanding every component of the actual um, framework before doing the choice. Now, the next step will be more for the future, so thinking ahead of time. So really thinking about like flexibility and scaling, right? So, uh, is your framework going to be able to handle more features? Is it getting progressive development? So, is the team still making the framework better from time to time? Is there an active development community around it? Because if you start and use, let's say, a new product, like, I don't know, a web framework that just got out, and 6 months later, there's no funding for the project, they have no sponsors, stuff like that, they're obligated to shut down the project. Well, they don't care about you, right? You're still stuck with that solution, and your only choice is to migrate. And migration can cost a lot if you have a big project, and um, the knowledge of that framework is basically scattered, and you don't know how to do it. So just make sure that there's an active community, and you can basically get ready to migrate if there's any problem. um, and also, like, think about the scalability of it, right? Yes, there's new features, but is it enough for your specific use case, right? Are you gonna have like hundreds of users, or are we talking like millions of users? You need to make sure that the actual framework is performant enough where it can be used for your specific use case. Is it also flexible enough so you can do different types of project? Is it only like flexible so that you can do one project and you're gonna need to change for the next one or relearn a new framework? That's one thing I would also consider, right? Your goal is to basically most of the time build as fast as possible and not have to relearn everything on a new platform that is unknown to you. So think about that. Also, you need to make sure that the security aspect is taken care of, right? You cannot, like, mid project find out that there's a security problem that is not being taken care of by the team that is developing the solution. As you can see, as you might have heard, Next.js, which is one of the most React used framework, um, basically got a security threat where in their middleware, so basically between each request, there was a way that people could hijack that connection and basically bypass that middleware, which is a very big issue. But fortunately, since the Next.js team is really responding and fast and it's well funded and stuff like that, they basically fixed the issue and they patched it the next day. So that's very good to know. And that's the kind of security environment that you want to have on a project. Now, there's also the whole prototype and testing aspect of it. Is it like easy to do, or do you need to have like two different like on the web servers, stuff like that? Um, understand what does it take to run a local server, a local dev server, connecting it to your database, stuff like that. Pretty much all those frameworks you're going to be able to do it, but some are easier to do than others. And it's just something you need to take account of, that basically each framework or platform will have a way to build tests and test locally, and versus the production environment is going to be different. Now, it's also a way that you need to understand the performance and limitations. So if your laptop or computer is not strong enough to run a dev server for a specific framework, you might need to adjust yourself to respond to those requirements. And yeah, basically that's going to be the thing for prototype and testing. And if you follow those steps, I can guarantee you that you'll make a great choice and you won't have to change your framework in the near future. Because the reason that you need to check this in advance is because the more you basically go ahead and just choose something and don't think about it and don't analyze your reasoning behind it, the more you're gonna get basically technical debt in the future, where you need to basically refund all that lost time that you spent with a framework that doesn't suit your need. So I just wanted to make this video to basically get you guys cleared on like what are the steps. Now, if you need more like one-on-one support with me to maybe get you to understand your specific use case and maybe what you would need, feel free to basically come in the description. I have a quick call for 20 minutes and we can talk about what is your specific use case and how it could help you. It would be my pleasure to help you. So book a call and we can chat about it real soon. I'll see you guys in the next one. Leave any comments if you have one. Please subscribe if you enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in the next one.